Hello and welcome to another live lecture given by Professor Faison. I am taking this time to talk to you about the research paper, the research process, and to give you some ideas on how best to go about the research paper and to also explain the assignments that will lead up to the research paper. We are currently in the week where you are working on your research paper prospectus. And in your research paper prospectus, you will be asked to decide what your research topic is, as well as define your research questions. Think about what points and information you'd like to research, and you're also going to be asked to take a look at sources. So what I'm going to do right now is quickly review the actual research prospectus. So first thing we're going to do is take a look at the research paper prospectus. What I've done in this document is to give you pretty much an outline of what a research paper prospectus is. Basically, prospectus is a big word for plan. I have separated this assignment into parts for you. You will be submitting your prospectus or your research plan as a DQ assignment, so you will actually get a grade for this. For this assignment, you will write a prospectus in 500 to 750 words, as well as a works cited page with at least 4 sources. Okay, so for this stage of the research, you will need 4 sources from the Virginia State University Library database, and I'm going to walk you through those. Take some time to review this document. It's in the weekly DQ where your prospectus is due. And right here, you'll find out what a prospectus is. A prospectus is a statement that one writes in order to describe the various elements of a project they hope to undertake. You're undertaking a research paper. The goal of English 111 is to learn how to write research and to show that you can write research before you move on to the next level in your sophomore year, your junior year, and of course your senior year. So English 111 is definitely a course that you want to and need to complete as a freshman. Doesn't always happen that way, but you want to do your best to get out of the research class, the research writing class, so that you can have the tools and the skills necessary to write on the sophomore level and the junior level and the senior level. Similarly, scientific researchers often write research prospectuses in order to obtain both public and private funding for their projects. In publishing, nonfiction writers often write prospectuses or book proposals in order to get a publisher to buy their book. And in academics, a doctoral candidate must write a prospectus that is approved by a committee before she can even begin to write her dissertation. In all these cases, prospectuses are usually written in order to obtain financial or institutional support for one's project. In your case, you're writing the prospectus to gain my support. This makes an absolutely crucial part of any professional work and your work. Ultimately, a prospectus can mean the difference between being able to pursue your intended project or not. What kind of prospectus will you be writing in this class? You will be writing an academic prospectus, which summarizes not only the topic of your final research paper, but also states your working thesis statement, what the stakes of that argument are, and how you will go about proving your argument. Why are you writing a prospectus in this class? Learning how to write a strong prospectus is essential to succeeding in almost any profession. While different professions demand different types of project proposals that include different types of information organized according to different conventions, all of them are about the art of being able to articulate the purpose of your longer project in a concise and precise manner. It is likely that you might be asked to write prospectuses or paper proposals in your upper level courses college courses as well. So this is a chance to develop a skill you will most certainly be asked to use later on. So just in case you thought English 111 was just some elective course that you needed to take, it's much bigger than that. Writing is the basis of your communication, and it's going to be the backbone and the backdrop of how well you communicate in writing or orally moving forward. The other purposes of writing a perspective in this class are: number one, to get you thinking seriously about what you want to write for your final major project and whether or not that project is feasible. Number two, so that based on your perspectives, I can help you properly develop your paper. In journalism, this is what they call front-end editing. Front-end editing is crucial to helping any writer use their time well. That is something that you must do in this segment of the course. You must learn how to use your time well. We have 4 weeks left, 1 month. You can get a research paper written in 1 month. I'm laying out the groundwork for you and helping you to prepare for that. Good front-end editing helps the writer find a path of least resistance when researching, and it also ensures that they don't pursue story ideas that have no legs. That means you don't want to go down roads for research that are going to lead you nowhere. There's nothing worse than spending hours on something that you eventually have to scrap because it was simply a poorly developed idea. What your prospectus needs to include. All right, so I'm getting ready to go through the actual 5 things that your prospectus must have. First thing your prospectus must have is a topic. The topic is the general area you want to write about. Examples of topics are things like Ebola in America, ISIS, the Cold War, or representations of the legal system on television. Topics tend to be broad and are like the field in which questions are asked. So I'm going to throw out a few more things. You might decide you want to write about global warming, African Americans in education, women in professional athletics, political parties in 2021, millennials in the workplace, drug abuse in the African American community, alcoholism in the Native American community, poverty in white America, cultural appropriation. There are a number of topics you may choose. You may choose a topic that you've become interested in simply by being in this course and reading the materials that have been assigned to you. We've talked about a number of things in this course. We have discussed themes in African American female writings. We have discussed themes in African American male writings. We've discussed the use of the N-word. We've discussed a number of things. So if you'd like to choose one of those themes on which to write and research, you may. You cannot choose an author per se to research. You must choose a research topic, something that you want to know more about and give answers and find answers to. If you do not want to choose a theme related to anything we've done in the course, you may choose a topic that's relative to your major field of study: computer science, engineering. If you're in the hyperfield, if you're in mass communications, if you're a music major, if you're an English major, sociology major, criminal justice major, history, psychology, political science, agricultural science. If you'd like to be a veterinarian, if you'd like to be a medical doctor, if you'd like to do research in a particular field, whatever your heart's desire, you have the liberty to choose your own topic for this research paper prospectus and for the research paper. The topic that you choose here is going to be the topic that you stick with. You cannot change your topic next week, the week after, because working through this prospectus, you're going to have to choose your topic, choose your thesis. You're going to create research questions, and you're going to actually go into the VSU library database and find 4 sources that work to help answer the questions that you have asked or posed. So you don't want to 2 weeks from now waste your time. Whatever goes down on your prospectus is, and whatever makes it in on your prospectus is what you are expected to stick with. The only way you will change what's on your prospectus is if I look at it and I see where it's going to lead you to a dead end, and then I will work with you to come up with something else. So that's part 1. Part 1 of your prospectus is just turning in your topic. Your topic should not be a statement. It should not be a sentence. It should not be a question. It should be exactly like some of the examples that I've shown you. A phrase: Ebola in America, ISIS, the Cold War. If you like to write on terrorism, domestic terrorism in America, racism in America, anything you'd like to write about, but it must be your topic. Part 2 of your research prospectus requires that you have 3 research questions. And when you turn your prospectus in, I'd like to see part 2 numbered. You must have at least 3 questions that you will answer in the research paper. Topics are not questions, so every question should have a question mark. You ask a question within the area of the topic. One topic could lead to many different other questions. For example, the topic Ebola in America could have the following questions. 1, what are the chances of Ebola becoming a real epidemic in America? 2, how did Ebola come to the United States? 3, what is our government doing to prevent the spread of Ebola? 4, what myths are being spread about Ebola? Or even 5, is Ebola something we should really, truly be worried about? You can see that there could be hundreds of possible questions. Now, at this point, someone may be thinking, I would love to research coronavirus or COVID-19. You certainly may. At this point, there's enough research out there for you to be able to write this size of a research paper. When you find a question or a few possible questions that truly intrigue or interest you, you should analyze them. Is your question too vague? Is it too narrow? Can it be answered with a yes or no? Or does it demand a more complex answer? If your research question can be answered with a yes or a no, it is not a good research question. Think about other ways to ask the same question that is reworded. Do whatever it takes to become as clear as possible about the question you are asking. Also, be sure that your question can produce a complex answer. We don't want simple answers for research papers. We want complex answers. It is also important to learn to recognize the kinds of questions asked in particular disciplines. For example, literary scholars often pose questions about what certain texts mean, how they were produced, and what they reflect about the context in which they were produced. Historians, on the other hand, often ask cause and effect sorts of questions. They want to know why certain historical events happened. And legal scholars tend to be interested in how laws have been, are, or should be interpreted. I'm going to break this section down for you. If you decide you'd like to talk about a literary text, any of the literary texts that we've read in this course, I can tell you straight off the bat, the Alice Walker text, the Toni Morrison text, the Jamaica Kincaid, the Richard Wright, the Ralph Ellison, and the James Baldwin text would make excellent research topics. Only those 6. Also, if you decided you wanted to write about the Lady and the Tiger text, that would be a great research paper. Flip side, if you'd like to take the historian approach, on the other hand, and deal with a cause and effect types of questions, then you might decide to say, why did the Civil War happen? Why did the American Revolution happen? Why did the war in Iraq happen? These are all the types of questions that you may ask. Why did COVID-19 happen? Good luck with that. That might be a more challenging research question. But these are the various types of research methods that you may use. Remember, a good complex claim will come from good questions. A poor complex claim will come from unclear questions. All right? So we've talked about part 1 and part 2 of the prospectus. Part 1 is your topic. Part 2 are your 3 research questions. And you can think in terms of your research questions as your 3 major points that you plan to develop in your research. Part 3 of the research paper is the working thesis statement. Your working thesis should attempt to answer your question based on some preliminary research. It should not be based on a hunch. So your research thesis statement is not going to be I believe or I think. In fact, in your research paper, you shouldn't be using first person I at all. But on information you have started to analyze and synthesize. So your research thesis should not be based on a hunch, but on information that you have started to analyze and synthesize. For that reason, you must find at least 2 sources in order to develop your working thesis. The way you will find the 3 sources you need to develop a good working thesis is through the question you are asking. Look for sources that attempt to answer your question. One question leads to another, and another, and another. And make sure to evaluate your sources carefully. Ask yourself whether the answers they are providing are sophisticated and complex. And be sure not to use the first 3 sources that you find. This is especially true when you go to the VSU library database. Don't use the first 3 sources that you find. Click on several of the pages. Go to some of the sources that are at the end or in the middle. You want to peruse through, read the abstracts, find great sources that are going to help you to prove your research point. Look for sources that attempt to answer your question. Make sure to evaluate them carefully. Ask yourself whether the answers they are providing are sophisticated and complex. I'm repeating it. And be sure not to use the first 3 sources you find. Look at a few sources and then pick the ones that, based on your analytical reading, seem like the richest sources to start building your argument and your research paper. So part 3 is your working thesis statement. Part 4. For part 4, I want you to find 12 quotes that support the questions, the research questions that you have posed. So I've asked you in part 2 to create 3 research questions. And I'm asking you in part 4 to supply 12 quotes. 12 divided by 3 is 4 quotes per research question. So you should be offering up in this section at least 4 quotes per each of your 3 research questions. The prospectus needs to make clear how you are going to answer your question or how you are going to defend your thesis. That's 2 ways of saying the same thing. If you have a good question and good sources, it should be clear how you need to go about answering it. Quotes must be parenthetically cited properly in Mla format. You should have at least 4 sources from the VSU database that answer your research questions. In this section, you are required to list 3 quotes for each source. Okay? You have to have 4 sources. That'll give you 12 quotes total. 4 sources, 3 quotes for each source. 12 quotes from at least 4 sources from the VSU database. Now, moving on to the last part of your prospectus, part 5. This is the works cited. of at least the 4 sources you found in the VSU database. Basically, I showed you in a previous recorded lecture how to use the VSU library database. If you have not accessed that recorded lecture, please do so. I show you not only how to search for sources, but I also show you how the database will automatically format the works cited listing for whatever sources you find. So part 5, you need a works cited listing of 4 of the sources that you choose for the prospectus for your research plan. The prospectus needs to have a preliminary works cited page on which you will build as you continue researching. These should include scholarly sources from the university's library database. It might be the case that you find good sources that are not considered scholarly per se. You may use these sources, but only in conjunction with at least 2 scholarly sources, which may include entire books, chapters of books, and scholarly journal articles. For example, if you decide you'd like to write about one of the 6 authors, or Lady and the Tiger, which would be 7. If you decided you want to write about those would be your secondary sources in addition to what you're able to find in the VSU library database. They cannot be your primary sources. Be careful, because not all books are considered scholarly resources. You may use additional sources from the classroom, texts, or readings, but they cannot be your primary or 4 required sources, only additional secondary sources. You can write about one of the authors or texts in terms of themes that you'd like to research, and they can be your main focus. The text can actually be your main focus, but you are still to rely on the database sources as your primary sources. For example, if you chose to talk about the themes in James Baldwin's Letter to My Nephew, or in Ralph Ellison's Battle Royale, or Richard Wright's Hunger, if you choose to talk about Toni Morrison's Sweetness, or Alice Walker's Everyday Use, or Jamaica Kincaid's prose poem Girl, what you want to do is go to the VSU library database and look up sources on those selections. And those are the sources that you would use to help finalize and research and plan and map out your prospectus and your research plan. After you write your prospectus, the final paper may deviate from your prospectus. But before we talk about the final paper, after you submit this prospectus, in 2 weeks after the prospectus, you will submit your rough draft. Your rough draft will be a paper 3 grade. The final paper will be due the final week of the course, the final research paper. As you begin to research more deeply and think more critically, you might decide to use entirely different sources or make an entirely different argument, or even ask a different question. That's okay. That's part of the researching and writing process. Hopefully, by writing a prospectus and doing some initial research, you won't be in a situation where you have to find an entirely new topic a day before your paper is due. That is not a good idea. A good prospectus will concisely and clearly state the topic, research question, and working thesis for your paper. A good prospectus will incorporate relevant information from scholarly sources. A good prospectus will clearly outline a potential roadmap for how you might build your argument. And finally, a good prospectus will include rhetorical choices appropriate for your chosen audience. Now let's talk about audience. The audience for your research paper will be an academic audience. Still, you need to decide what academic discipline it is that you're specifically targeting. For example, if you are writing about Ebola, are you writing about Ebola for an audience of biologists, cultural anthropologists, public health scholars, historians, literary scholars, or even college students, or Parents. You'll need to know which academic audience you are writing for. So one, you can use the appropriate language, discourse, jargon of that discipline. Jargon is just another word for type of language or level of language or level of discourse. You wouldn't speak to primary school students in the same way you would speak to your college professor. You'll need to know which academic audience you're writing for. Also, for number two, know what information your audience will already have so that you don't state the obvious. For example, you chose to write your paper on teenage pregnancy or the Me Too movement. You don't want to spend your paper telling the reader things that the reader already knows. This is why you focus on, you go to the sources first. You go to the VSU library database, and your entire paper is based off of research. You create the topic, you create the research questions, but the actual answers and the development come from the source material, the quotes. Finally, number three, you'll need to know which academic audience you're writing for so that you can be aware of the current conversation scholars in the discipline are having about your chosen topic. To this end, you want to be sure that you're reading your sources not only for their content, but also for how they are being written. That is, you must also read rhetorically. Make sure to identify the conventions being used. What terms do these scholars regularly use? We often call this sort of discipline-specific language jargon. What information do they include that, say, a newspaper article might not include? For example, they will likely be way more in-depth. What information do they exclude that, say, a magazine article for a general audience might? For example, they might not include basic information that they know other scholars will already have. Let's look at specifications. Your prospectus must be 500 to 750 words, not including your works cited page. Your prospectus must include a works cited page in Mla format with at least 4 scholarly sources from the VSU library database. Your prospectus must be in Mla formatting and include Mla citations, and any paper that does not meet these specifications will not be accepted and will not pass the prospectus level. That means this assignment for DQ 11. Turn it in. Head your paper as you normally would. You're going to include an Mla header. You're going to title the paper Research Prospectus. And then you're going to Roman numeral your paper. Roman numerals, just like I did in the sections above. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're going to Roman numeral your paper in those 5 parts and include in each part. You're going to type this in a Microsoft Word document. You're going to save it with your last name, DQ 11 Prospectus, and then you're going to actually upload it as an attachment to DQ 11. Make sure you submit it on time. This prospectus is due, I believe it's slated to be due at the end of the week. See the template on the next page, copy and paste the following into a Microsoft Word document and complete. So if you'll scroll down here, I've pretty much outlined the research prospectus for you, what it should look like when you submit it. So let's just take a walkthrough. We can't copy the inserted header, but we will copy all of this. I'm going to select copy, and I'm going to open up a Microsoft Word document. I've got to stop share and reshare my screen. So we're going to actually paste this into a Microsoft Word document. And as you can see, the spacing is off. So the first thing we want to do is double space this. Highlight it all, go to spacing, click on 2.0, Let's check our spacing to make sure there's no extra spacing. Before and after spacing should always be set to 0, and this little box should always be checked. Don't add space between paragraphs. This should be double. Click OK, and our spacing is adjusted. First name, last name, professor name, class and section, date. Research prospectus should be centered. Okay, and now we have our various parts here. First thing we're going to do though is we're going to click right up here on the top of the page. Click, and we're going to add our header here. Last name, and we're going to click on right justification so that our last name goes way over here to the right. We're going to come out of the header, and we're going to do insert page number. Insert page numbers. We want our page number at the top and the right, and we want to show the page number on the first page. So we're going to leave this box checked, and this shows you where that number will go. Click OK, and there's our page number. Now finally, we want to click back on the inserted header and change this to the proper Mla font. All of this matters. Oops, let's undo. Let's make sure we change even our page number to Times New Roman, and it's already size 12. So we are ready to roll. First thing you want to do is save your document. First, last name, prospectus. And you can put English 111 there. You want to save it to your desktop so that you don't lose work. And we're going to just kind of work through here. Let's just say I would like to write my research paper on segregated education. Segregated education, okay? So my topic is segregated education. Let's see what research questions I would like to come up with. So the first thing I'm going to do here is, I don't want that bold. I'm going to number my questions. Question. Uh-oh. What happened there? Two. Let's do this. Let's insert numbers. Oh no, we don't want to do that. Okay, let's just write our numbers. All right. So we'll say research questions. My first question is going to be, what was the Black segregated education experience like? That's one question. What was the Black segregated education experience like? Number 2, what were some positive outcomes of the Black segregated education experience? Question 3, what were educators like in Black segregated schools? Which states had the most, which states had the best Black segregated schools? Which states had the lowest performing segregated schools, and why? We might want to go up here and ask, and why? All right, so literally I've thrown out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 research questions. Okay, your minimum requirement is to have 3, but you can have more. If I were you, I would definitely have more, and that way I can let you know which ones are the best questions for you to move forward with. All right, thesis statement. And straighten our document back up. So I'm just going to say your thesis statement at this point can be your hypothesis, your if-then statement. The Black segregated education experience in the South provided an optimal learning environment for students of color, period. After I write my statement, I'm going to bold thesis statement. I'm halfway through the prospectus, right? Halfway through it. Let's save our work. Here I need 12 quotes. Include 12 quotes and parenthetical citations for each. Okay? 12 quotes. All right. Let's see what we can find. We're going to run over to the VSU database and find us some sources. I'm going to run through maybe 2 sources with you and list quotes, and then we're going to move on to the next stage. Let's make sure I'm sharing the right screen with you. Desktop. All right. So we're getting ready to go look at the VSU library database. We're going to click on academics, scroll over to library. We're going to come down here to the databases. All right. And because I'm doing segregated education, I'm going to put in Black segregated education in the South. Search. Now remember what I said. Don't use the first 3 sources that you find. Challenges and issues facing the education system in South Africa. See there? Has absolutely nothing to do with what I want to talk about. Growing up Black and deaf in the segregated South. That one is relative, but it also talks about being Black and deaf, so I may not want to look at that. Let's keep scrolling until we find something we can use. Let's keep scrolling until we find something we can use. What Black educators built? I think this might be one that we can use. Let's click on this one. It has a PDF text there, so it's definitely a source I recommend. Let's take a look at the abstract. The author discusses the work of African American educators in segregated schools. She mentions the efforts to build aspiration and resilience in the students, the creation of networks and organizations that led to desegregation, and the consequences of integrated schools. All right, so the first thing we want to do is take a look at the full PDX. of this because we need quotes. I have to sign in, of course, in order to be able to access the document. This is a document that I definitely want to use as a source. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to email this to myself. Send. So this document has been sent to me. All right. Now let's take a look down here. Remember, we're looking for quotes. Segregation era Black educators set the groundwork for an equitable and aspirational educational system for all. How can we get back to their vision? I like that. And what page of her book is on? This is on page 13. Page 13. I'm going to pull up our Word document and I'm going to add that quote there. Uh-oh. I may have to type that quote. We'll come back to it. All right. Maybe we can find that quote. This was on, what did I say? That was on page 13. I just need to note the page number there, and we'll come back to that. In segregated school environments, schools encourage Black children to aspire to believe they could be anything they wanted to be. Let's see. So she starts here. Let's see what we can use. Black educators focus specifically on the needs of Black children in school and the ways they might solve the problems the children confronted. Among their conversations were topics such as professionalism, teaching responsibility, civics, testing, and guidance. Their ideas filtered through national meetings, state meetings, regional meetings, and small study groups, and can be documented with extraordinary content consistency over decades and into the practice of individual schools. Tracing this undocumented pedagogical world was illuminating. This network, I recognized, was a major reason why CCTS was such a good school and why the people I met all had similar experiences at their segregated schools. So let's just take these two. We'll take this first quote. You may couple more than one quote together. I'll put this one down here. Let's see what, this is on page 15. Among their conversations were, these two quotes definitely go together. Among their conversations. Uh-oh, I don't want that. Among their conversations. This is on page 15. All right. Remember, we need about, we have 3 questions, so we need about 4 quotes from each source. Let's see. Here's a good one. Black educators did not merely use their intricate networks to disseminate pedagogical ideas, that means teaching ideas that would inspire Black children to succeed in a challenging and an inequitable school climate, but they also used those networks to create advocacy structures to undermine segregation. Through their educational organizations and networks, these educators generated the invisible collaborative activity that supplied money, data, and plaintiffs for Brown versus the Board of Education. We'll put these 2 together. In quiet collaborative spaces, the leaders of these organizations, along with brilliant lawyers and courageous parents, created a mechanism of advocacy for African American school children that stretched through the U.S. South. Basically, these quotes tell us that teachers' jobs went beyond teaching in the classroom. It went beyond the ethic of care that they had, but there was also social justice and advocacy in their pedagogy, their teaching style. So I'm going to copy that. I think we have enough. These all come from page 16. So as you can see, you may have to retype some of these. Let me see if I can clear the format of this. Edit. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see what I'm doing right now. Let me go back and share screen again. Share screen. Share. All right. So I'm back in the Microsoft Word document. I'm back in our prospectus, and these are the quotes that I'm copying over. This is the last one. It seems to be a little out of format. I'm going to see if I can clear this. Clear formatting. And it'll take some time to do this, but we're going to work through it. This is better than retyping it all. Actually, let me first put this in size 12. It must be in Times New Roman, and it must be in size 12. This also. Oops. Let me see. This is the way this actually pasted here. Let's see if we can clear this. Clear formatting. Yeah, cleared it. So let's see. Need to put this in Times New Roman also. Size 12. Something's actually out of format. Times New Roman, size 12. Okay, all right. Now we have our quotes, and we're just kind of setting them up to be the way the only thing I need to do is go back. We're going to save this. I have to go back and get the works cited listing for this source. Desktop. I want to make sure you all can see what I'm doing. All right, let's go back. I think we were here. Share. Okay. So in the actual database window, we know we want to use this source. Okay. We've already clicked here to email it to ourselves. We want to click on this little icon here that looks like a sheet of paper and it says Cite. Let's click on it. And what you're going to get is all the different types of citation formats. We want to scroll down, find MLA style. There it is. There is our works cited listing for this source. Copy it. Now we can go back to our actual document. And Microsoft Word. Share. All right. So let's just, part 5, we have to have a works cited listings. Now, because this is your prospectus, you not necessarily have to list the title works cited. I mean, if it just helps you to have it there, you can have it there. But let's fix this up a bit. Times New Roman, size 12. Actually, let's make all of this Times New Roman, size 12. Times 12. I feel like, yes, some things are a little bit off. Okay, so our document is coming together. All right, so works cited. You can go ahead and center this piece. There should be a colon after works cited. Also, it's a works cited page. It's only going to be single work without an S if you have only one source. But anytime you have more than one source, make sure this word is works with an S. All right. We don't want this numbered. Our works cited listings should not be numbered. All right. But they should be double spaced. Double space. Let's check the before and after spacing. Set to 0, 0, and check. All right. Now, how we do hanging indentation. Many of you have not been getting a hanging indentation done correctly. Okay. Hanging indentation means that every line that hangs after that first line is indented. So if you press the tab key, this can happen. So we don't want that. We want to undo that. What you want to do is press your cursor right here. Press the enter key and then the tab key, and it will move over. Okay. Now we would typically drag this back to here. Oops, I don't want to do that. Drag that back to here, but because this is a long website, we don't want to do that. So we're going to put our cursor here. We're going to press enter again, and it's going to move over. We're going to put our cursor here. Press enter again, and it'll move over. So this is the correct works cited listing. So this is, you're going to do this for every source. Okay, now we're going to have to cite these quotes. All right. We use pages 12 through 18 of this source. So the last name of this author is Cital Walker. This is her entire last name. This is her first name. Okay. When you do a parenthetical citation of a quote or a paraphrase, you only use the author's last name and whatever page the quote comes from. So let's just copy this. We're going to go back up here to where we're listing our 12 quotes. All right. So this is a quote that we like right here. First of all, let's put it in quotation marks. Segregation era Black educators set the groundwork for an inequitable and aspirational education system for all. How can we get back to their vision? Okay. We're going to take this out. And we're just going to use this quote right here. And the quote, we're going to paste the author's last name in there, Cital Walker. And the page number that quote came from is here, page 13. We can remove that now. So this is going to look like this. Each one of your quotes should have a parenthetical citation. That's the first one. Let's take a look here. Black educators focus specifically on the needs of Black children in school and the ways they might solve the problems the children confronted. Among their conversations were topics such as professionalism, teaching responsibilities, civics testing, and guidance. Okay? So you could choose to make this 2 quotes or 1 long quote, but they go together. So we're going to leave them together. And this comes from Cited Walker, page 15. Remove the P and the period. We don't use P in MLA format. Okay? So already we've got our 2 quotes for this source. Let's come down further. These were from page 16. Black educators did not merely use their intricate networks to disseminate pedagogical ideas that would inspire children, Black children, to succeed in a challenging and inequitable school climate, but they also used those networks to create advocacy structures to undermine segregation. We're going to end that one there. And this is going to be our 3rd quote, Cited Walker, and this quote is from page 16. Now, notice that I'm putting periods after my parenthetical citation. You don't have a period here and a period here. You don't have a period here and not here. In MLA format, period comes after the parenthetical citation. And here's our last quote. Through their educational organizations and networks, these educators generated the invisible collaborative activity that supplied money, data, and plaintiffs for the Brown versus the Board of Education decision. This is a court case, so it should be italicized. In quiet collaborative spaces, the leaders of these organizations, along with brilliant lawyers and courageous parents, created a mechanism of advocacy for African American school children that stretched through the U.S. South. I'm going to quote all of this together. And this quote is also from page 16 of the text. So it's going to look like this. Cited Walker 16. And voila, you have your 12 quotes. And remember, you would include quotation marks and parenthetical citation for each quote. We have that. Uh-oh. We don't wanna... And we can literally move these quotes over. You want them like under your 12, so you can do this. There. If you want to number your quotes, you can number them this way. To keep track of how many quotes you have, right? And if we want to make a quote shorter, we think, oh, we don't need all of that, then we can do this. Let's put our period there. All right. So we have, let's look at our perspectives so far. Topic, segregated education. Or we might want to say, we're focusing on Black segregated education. There were 2 kinds of segregated education. So our topic is Black segregated education. Our research questions. What was the Black segregated education experience like? Okay. Based on the quotes we have some answers there. What were some positive outcomes of the Black segregated education experience? I think we have some answers for that. What were educators like in Black segregated schools? Which states had the best Black segregated schools and why? Which states had the lowest performing? We don't have any of that, so I'm going to go ahead and scratch these last 2 questions, and we still have our 3. We have question 1. We have question 2. We have question 3. All right. And if you want to do this with your questions, you may. 1, 2, and 3. So whatever you do, make sure you keep your entire paper, your prospectus, in format. Now, these are things that you're eventually going to carry over to your draft. You're not going to number anything in your draft. Your draft is an actual written paper. But so we've done, you need 12 quotes for part 4 of the prospectus. We have 4. So you need to find 2 more sources, and you need to find, this is just a sample. This is just my sample. But I want to show you what it was like when you do this on your own based on your topic. So part 5 of the prospectus is to have the 4 sources in your works cited page format. These must be in alphabetical order, properly formatted titles, all pertinent information required for the type of source. You can use citationmachine.net, easybib.com, or you can use the Norton textbook. But you really don't need to do any of that because you're getting your source from the VSU library database. And I just showed you which little icon to click on, the icon that looks like a sheet of paper, and you'll get this citation, and all you have to do is copy it. All right. So our first source is Siddle Walker, Vanessa, What Black Educators Built. This is the title of her essay. The title of the magazine that it was found in is Educational Leadership, Volume 76, Number 7, published April 2019. Pages of this article are pages 12 through 18. It was found in EBSCOhost, which is a database, and this is the site. Okay. Now, because we have the database here and all this other information, you could really choose to take out the web page and just have this. So we've started the prospectus. This is what your prospectus will be. Now, of course, when you finish turning in your prospectus, you're going to have 8 more. Then you're going to have, you're going to have 8 total. And then you add your next 3 quotes. So altogether, you'd have 12 quotes, okay? And you also have to have how many sources? 4. So your sources are going to go right behind one another. Let's see. Make sure we get this right. All right. So that'd be source 1, source 2, source 3, source 4. So this is what your finished prospectus should look like once you've added all the necessary information. We're on page 3. Don't forget to put your last name in your header. Once you put it in the first page header, it shows up in all pages. Your works cited listing would begin on a totally different page. So you can just go here and click on works cited, insert page break, and it's automatically going to go there. Now, if you do your works cited page properly this time, you won't even have to redo this when you do your rough draft or your final draft. You may have to add a source or 2, but once you work on your formatting, it's there. So here's your prospectus, what your prospectus would look like. Let's go back to the top. Last name, inserted page number. Type your first and last name, professor's name, English 111-16, 17, 18, whatever your section is, and today's date. All right, you're all set. Research paper, prospectus. My topic is Black Segregated Education. My research questions are, what was the Black segregated education experience like? What were some positive outcomes of the Black segregated education experience? What were educators like in Black segregated schools? Now, these questions may change a bit once I found the sources that I want. Thesis statement. The Black segregated education experience in the South provided an optimal learning environment for students of color. And then here are my 12 quotes. Each quote is in quotation marks and it has parenthetical citation. 1, 2, 3, 4 from source 1, and then I'd have 1, 2, 3, 4 from a different source, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more from another source, and of course part 5, it would be the 4 sources in a works cited page, and those are here. Okay, so your prospectus, give or take, should be about 3 pages. Okay, now just for the sake of turning in your prospectus, the outline itself does not need to be double spaced. So for your quotes, they can be single spaced, but make sure you space in between. So I'm going to save this, and that would be your prospectus. So I have worked through the entire ordeal of putting a prospectus together. I hope that you have enjoyed this walk along in showing you how best to begin the prospectus, how to work your way through a document, as well as the VSU library database, and how to work on choosing a topic. Again, you choose your own research topic. Choose something that you're interested in. It could be something that has piqued your interest in this course. It could be something that's piqued your interest in your major. It could be something that you've just always been interested in and never had the time to sit down and actually study and research. I didn't spend any time at all in the database. You're going to spend a little bit more time than we did. I just was getting through it, going through the motions for you. When you go through the sources, make sure you find sources that can answer your research questions. Otherwise, the research paper will not come together. Good luck as you complete your research paper prospectus and move forward to the next step. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me in many of the modes that I've already offered. Have a great day.